Okay, be honest. You watched Dune, Part 2, and amidst all the sandworm riding and Timothée Chalamet's aura, you missed the fact that this movie is secretly a horror story, right? While we were all cheering for Paul Atreides to get his revenge, Chalamet and Denis Villeneuve were quietly hiding breadcrumbs that reveal a future so dark it makes Game of Thrones look like Sesame Street. If you thought the Harkonnens were the biggest problem, oh boy, you are not ready for what the Golden Path actually means. Buckle up, people, because we are diving into the deep, dark lore that the movie left in the subtext. Why there are no iPhones in space. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or rather, the lack of robots in the room. You're telling me these guys can fold space and travel faster than light, but they fight with knives and use paper maps? It feels like a plot hole, but it's actually the most important hidden detail in the entire franchise. In some blink and you'll miss it dialogue, the movie references thinking machines. But they don't explicitly tell you that humanity already had its Skynet moment. See, about 10,000 years before Paul was born, humanity was enslaved by an artificial intelligence called Omnius. This wasn't just Alexa playing the wrong song. This was a full-on apocalypse known as the Butlerian Jihad. The entire human race had to band together to smash every computer in existence. That's why you see guys like Thufir Hawat rolling his eyes back and doing mental math. They literally outlawed calculators. The commandment in their holy book, the Orange Catholic Bible, is, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." And if you dig into the prequel lore, it gets even gnarlier. Before the AI took over, a group of rebels called the Titans decided the best way to rule was to literally scoop their own brains out and slap them into giant mechanical spider tanks. They ruled for a century as literal brains in jars before their own AI slave, Omnius, got sick of them and took over. So when the Fremen look at technology with pure hatred, they aren't just being superstitious Luddites. They are culturally remembering a time when their landlords were immortal cyborgs who treated regular humans like cattle called Regear. That fear is baked into every frame of Villeneuve's world. This context changes everything about Dune. Part 2. When Paul uses the atomics, those nukes, to blow open the shield wall at the end, he isn't just breaking a ceasefire, he is terrifying the entire galaxy because weapons of mass destruction are a massive taboo left over from the days when robots nearly wiped us out. The movie hides this trauma in the architecture and the silence, making the universe feel ancient and terrified of its own technology. This fear of tech also birthed the Great Convention, a set of galactic laws established in the 1st century AG that forces everyone to fight like it's the Middle Ages. Since they can't use computers or nukes against humans without getting obliterated by the rest of the Empire, the noble houses actually adopted something called the Assassin's Handbook. This book literally outlines the rules of engagement, including a specific list of which poisons are legal to slip into your enemy's drink. It turned warfare into a twisted game of 4D chess where stabbing someone is honorable, but pressing a button is a war crime. That's why the Harkonnen brutality feels so intimate. The law requires them to kill you up close. We are way, way farther in the future than you think. Timothée Chalamet has mentioned in interviews that playing Paul was heavy because of the sheer weight of history on the character's shoulders, and he wasn't kidding. The movie flashes the year 10,191, and your brain probably goes, okay, 10,000 years from now, got it. Nope, you are way off. That year, 10,191 isn't AD, it's AG after Guild. The calendar didn't start over at Jesus, it started over when the Spacing Guild was founded. If you do the math and add up the before Guild era, which includes our history and the robot wars I just mentioned, Dune takes place roughly 20,000+ years in our future. We are ancient history to them. We are basically mud-dwelling bacteria to Paul Atreides. This is why the rituals in the movie feel so bizarre and entrenched. The Bene Gesserit haven't been plotting for a few decades. They have been manipulating bloodlines for 90 generations. When Chalamet gives that look of absolute exhaustion after drinking the water of life, he's acting out the weight of 20 millennia of human memories crashing into his brain at once. He isn't just seeing the future, he's seeing the past that has been totally forgotten. It's a subtle detail, but once you know it, the scale of the movie becomes absolutely paralyzing. The secret meaning of the Golden Path. Now let's talk about the moment Timothée Chalamet's performance goes from sad boy in the desert to terrifying warlord. It happens right after he wakes up from the coma induced by the water of life. He tells Lady Jessica he sees a narrow way through the visions. Most people interpreted this as, I see a way we can win the war. If only it were that simple. What Paul actually sees is something from the deep lore called the Golden Path and it is hideous. Paul realizes that humanity has become stagnant. We are all stuck in this one empire, and if something doesn't change, the species will go extinct. The narrow way he sees is a future where he has to become a tyrant worse than Hitler and Genghis Khan, combined to force humanity to scatter across the universe. That is the hidden tragedy Chalamet is playing in the final act. He isn't angry because he wants power, he's angry because he realizes that to save humanity, he has to become a monster. He has to launch a holy war that will kill billions, literally 61 billion people, according to the books. When he yells, "Lead them to paradise," he's being ironic. He knows he's leading them into a meat grinder, but his visions tell him it's the only way the human race survives in the long run. It recontextualizes the whole ending. It's not a victory, it's a death sentence for his soul. The truth about the fetus. We need to talk about Anya Taylor-Joy, or rather, the creepy CGI fetus that talks to Lady Jessica. The movie shows Aaliyah Atreides communicating from the womb, which is already nightmare fuel. But the hidden detail here is why the Reverend Mother is so terrified of her. She calls her an abomination, and in the lore, this is a very specific, terrifying medical condition. Because Jessica drank the glowing blue Gatorade while pregnant, Aaliyah woke up to full consciousness before she was even born. She has the memories of millions of ancestors, but she has no baby ego to protect herself from them. In the books, and hinted at in the movie's subtext, this means Aaliyah is vulnerable to being possessed by the ghosts of the past, specifically her grandfather, Baron Harkonnen. Yeah, you heard me. The lore implies that the villainous Baron you just saw get stabbed is going to spend the next few years haunting his own granddaughter from the inside of her mind. Denis Villeneuve left this simmering in the background, but it explains why the Bene Gesserit looked at Jessica like she just pulled the pin on a grenade. They know that a baby isn't just a baby, it's a ticking time bomb of genetic memory that they can't control. Jason Momoa's character is the true lead. This is the biggest Easter egg of them all, and it requires spoiling things that happen about 5,000 years after the movie ends. Everyone loves Duncan Idaho. He's the cool uncle who fights like a demon and sacrifices himself so Paul can escape. In part 2, he's dead. Gone. Buried in the sand. Or is he? The hidden detail that book readers know is that Duncan Idaho is technically the main character of the entire Dune saga. The movie hints at the Tleilaxu technology, the weird biological tinkering the Harkonnens use. In the future, these guys keep bringing Duncan back as a Gola, basically a clone with restored memories. Paul's son, Leto II, who we will get to in a second, literally keeps cloning Jason Momoa's character over and over again for thousands of years. He lives, he serves the Atreides, he dies, and they print a new one. It's a dark, twisted loop, but it implies that the loyalty Duncan shows in the first movie is actually his curse. He is destined to be the eternal servant of a family that eventually loses its humanity. So when you watch that death scene in part 1 or feel his absence in part 2, just know that poor guy has a very, very long shift ahead of him. The worm god future. Now let's talk about the vision Chalamet didn't explicitly explain to us, but is definitely haunting him. Throughout the movie, there is this heavy emphasis on the sandworms being Shai Hulud, or Old Father Eternity. Paul's connection to the worms is deeper than just riding them like an Uber. In the lore, the golden path I mentioned earlier requires an emperor who can live long enough to enforce the ultimate peace. Paul sees this future and is terrified of it because it requires a physical transformation. He knows that to rule forever, he would have to merge his body with the sandworms. I'm not joking. The endgame of Dune involves a human-worm hybrid ruling the galaxy for 3,500 years. Paul Atreides, played by our beautiful Timothe, looks at that future and basically says, "Nah, I'm good." He chooses the path of war because he can't stomach the path of becoming a monster physically. This is the hidden detail of his hesitation. He isn't afraid of dying, he's afraid of living for too long. He passes the buck to his unborn son, who, spoiler alert, is the one who eventually takes the plunge and becomes the worm god. So, does this change how you see the movie? Dune. Part 2 isn't just a sci-fi action flick. It's a tragedy about a guy who sees a future filled with nukes, possessed babies, worm hybrids, and billions of deaths, and decides to pull the trigger anyway because the alternative is extinction. Timothée Chalamet and Denis Villeneuve managed to pack 20,000 years of terrifying history into a few looks and some visions. And frankly, it's genius. If you want to see us break down exactly how the Bene Gesserit breeding program went so wrong, or why the Spacing Guild navigators look like fish, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Popcorn Central for more deep dives that break down your favorite movies. so well you'll want to rewatch them.